All right, today we're heading to Indianapolis to talk about a legendary summer basketball tournament. But here's the thing. This story, it isn't really about the game itself. It's about what can happen when a simple patch of dirt and gravel becomes something so much more. I mean, what if it was the soul of a community? A real proving ground where a whole legacy was forged, literally, in the dust. Yep, this is the story of the Dust Bowl. So where did this whole thing even start? Well, to really get this tournament, you first have to understand the ground it was played on. And you definitely have to understand the community that called it home, Lockefield Gardens. Okay, so Lockefield Gardens opened way back in February 1938. It was the city's first federally funded housing project, and it was built specifically for its black residents. Now, you gotta remember, this was a deeply segregated city. So this place wasn't just a bunch of apartments, no way. It was a world unto itself, a really thriving hub for black life on the near west side. And right at the heart of this community, there was a basketball court. But listen, this wasn't some fancy, polished hardwood floor. It was this rough mix of dirt, cinder, and gravel. So just imagine, every crossover, every single drive to the hoop would just kick up these huge clouds of dust. That's why the name wasn't some clever metaphor. It was totally literal. Everybody just called it the Dust Bowl. So yeah, that dusty court, it became the beating heart of the whole neighborhood almost overnight. So the big question is, how did a bunch of informal pickup games turn into one of the biggest, most important summer events in the entire city? The year is 1948. By this point, the pickup games happening there are already the stuff of legend. So some community organizers, they get together with the Police Athletic League and they decide, hey, let's make this thing official. And that's exactly what they did. They staged the very first Dust Bowl tournament, and I'm telling you, right from the opening tip, it was an absolute phenomenon. This timeline here, I mean, it really lays out the whole story of the tournament in its original home. You can see the community starting up in 38, then boom, 10 years later, the tournament gets official. But look at that third point. As early as 1954, you can already see the storm clouds gathering. That pressure from redevelopment was this long shadow that would eventually, 2 decades later, lead to the final game at Lockefield. But you know, the Dust Bowl was so much more than just a place. It was a whole style of play. And it was a stage for some of the greatest talent the state of Indiana had ever seen, period. To really grasp the impact here, you've got to understand what Indiana basketball was kind of known for at the time. The whole stereotype was, rural, slow, super methodical, think set shots next to a barn. The Dust Bowl was the complete opposite. It was the pure city game, fast, aggressive, and just brilliantly improvisational. It really helped redefine basketball in a state that absolutely lives and breathes the sport. And the city's black newspaper, the Indianapolis Recorder, they just nailed it back in 1951. It shows you that this wasn't just any old game. This was the ultimate proving ground. It was the great equalizer, where a neighborhood hero could go toe-to-toe with a big-shot college All-American and actually win. And that, to me, is what's so incredible about it. Yeah, of course, you had future legends like the Big O, Oscar Robertson, and total trailblazers like Bill Garrett, the guy who broke the Big Ten's color barrier. But, and this is just as important, you also had factory workers and regular neighborhood kids playing on that exact same court. They got to be heroes for a summer night. It was a true proving ground for absolutely everyone. But here's the tough part of the story. The very community that created and sustained the Dust Bowl, well, they were living on borrowed time. These powerful forces of so-called urban renewal were closing in fast, and eventually they would force the tournament right out of its home. And this whole displacement thing, it didn't just happen overnight. It was a process. First, Indiana University started expanding, saying it needed more land. Then, the city declared the whole area blighted, and that's a really loaded word. It was basically a green light for officials all over America to just bulldoze black neighborhoods for redevelopment. So as the homes were torn down and families were forced to scatter, the very heart of the community that fueled this amazing tournament was just ripped out. And that led to August 1974. The final whistle blew. The very last Dust Bowl tournament was played at its spiritual home. It was the end of a truly iconic era. But you know what? The end at Lockefield wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. So now let's talk about reclaiming the legacy. How did the tournament's spirit survive all this? And how is its powerful history being remembered and, well, reclaimed today? The tournament did survive, but it had to adapt. right? The Indiana Black Expo stepped in to take over sponsorship. The games had to move to other city parks, like Tarkington and Douglas. But it kept the name, it kept the spirit, and it stayed a huge summer event, even without its original home court. But that name, Dust Bowl, it carries so much weight. There's a profound responsibility that comes with it. In fact, a recent article in the Indianapolis Recorder really hit the nail on the head. It said that using the name today means you're obligated to honor not just the basketball, but the entire history of Lockefield and the Black community that was displaced. And that brings us right up to the present day. You've got efforts like the Granddaddy Dust Bowl, which was launched to explicitly reclaim that original legacy. It's a really intentional effort to connect a whole new generation to this sacred history. It's about making sure that the story of the court, the community, and its soul is never, ever forgotten. So, all of this leaves us with a really big, powerful question, doesn't it? The original court, it's gone, paved over. So how do we honor the history of places that just don't exist anymore? If the story of the Dust Bowl teaches us anything, it's that the answer isn't just in remembering. It's in the active, intentional work of telling its story over and over again.